Alright, so we got a 2003 Acura TL 3.2 in it. It's got the p0505, which is idle air control system. Actually, in the service manual, it doesn't even say anything about checking the wiring on it. It just says take the air in hose off and plug the bottom of the throttle body with your finger, and if the idle adjusts, then replace it, or blah blah blah. There's actually 3 wires on it that go to it, and you have one ground, one 12 volt, and then one going to ECM. I already went ahead and checked all those, and they were good. So to get to it, it's actually on the bottom of the throttle body. So the throttle body goes kind of like this on the car, on the intake, facing this way, and your idle air control valve motor is right here. So I went ahead and took it off. It's just 2 Phillips screws on the bottom, which your throttle body off. And what this car was doing is it was surging up and down real bad. It would go up to about 2,000 RPM and then go back down and go up and go back down constantly. And even when you were driving at low speed, it would surge a little. So anyway, I went ahead and got one, and we'll put a new one on this throttle body, and I'll just kind of go over putting the throttle body back on the car. Originally, I wasn't going to make a video on it, but I figure if you have this code, we'd go over it, and I'll show you how to change the motor and put the throttle body on and off, or take it off and put it back on, and hopefully fix this car. So I got the new one. I'm going to go over to the bench, and we'll put this back on and kind of go over it, and put the new idle air control valve on the throttle body, and we'll kind of go over it, and then we'll come back over to the car and put it. All right, here's just the throttle body off the car. Obviously, there's 2 Phillips screws that hold on to the bottom of the throttle body. This is how it goes on to the manifold. 2 screws are right here. So, a lot of times, especially on a car this old, the screws don't want to break loose. So my suggestion would be to get an impact screwdriver like this, and just have someone hold it, or you hold it, and just hit it with this a couple times, and it should knock them loose. Otherwise, you'll strip them out, and then you have another problem. So it's pretty easy. Once you get them loose, this just pulls off. Now, I've heard some people can use like carb cleaner or whatever and kind of clean these out and maybe get it to work again, but we're not going to do that. We're just going to replace it. So I'll get the new one, and we'll put it on, and it's pretty self-explanatory. You got one rubber seal right here. So we'll get the new one, put it on, and then we'll go back. Alright, so here's the new one. It's real clean on the inside. You can see sometimes these will build up with a bunch of carbon and stuff right in here, and that can cause performance problems. But this has one of those tamper-proof. You can't just replace the motor, you got to replace this whole thing here. So anyway, so just put your rubber seal, make sure it's clean, put your rubber seal in, and then we'll just set this over and screw it back in. It's very simple. And shouldn't take too long. Get the throttle body off, it's not too hard either. Biggest issue with that, maybe the throttle cables if you're not used to doing those, and the little coolant hoses sometimes can be caked on there pretty good. So you're just going to tighten these 2 screws down after you get it lined up, and just make sure they're decently tight. And then we'll go back over to the car and stick this back on the manifold. Alright, so you're going to want to take a good look at your throttle body gasket, base gasket right here. This one's in good shape. If it's in good shape, don't replace that, because that thing is really stuck on those manifolds. They don't just peel off like most throttle body gaskets. You could spend a half hour more just cleaning that off if yours is bad or whatever, you suspect it's leaking, and you have to replace it. I feel sorry for you, because those things, Honda like glues them on there, so they're a real pain in the butt to get off. It's a lot more time consuming than most throttle body gaskets, let's just say that. So anyway, there's 4 bolts to hold that in. I actually had a hose that split on mine for the throttle body coolant hose, so I got to put that on real quick, and then we'll set the throttle body in there and get it started, and I'll kind of show you where all the hoses. Alright, so there's a couple of hoses you're going to want to set up first before you put this back on the manifold, and you're also going to want to put your throttle cables back together. You see here you have a slot there and a slot here, and what you do is just kind of move this back up so you can bring the cable. The cable is going to come up through here and go into here. So you're just going to pull the cable up around and line it up with the slots, and then that ball, the retaining ball, should come out with it. So I'm going to go ahead and line those up first before I put this bolted back up. Then you have 2 Phillips screws that go right here that hold the throttle cable bracket onto the throttle body. So you can if you're taking it apart, what you do is just take it apart and get it off the car and just kind of move it away from the manifold, and then you can just turn it off to the side. It's easier to get to. There's no reason to take this off while it's still on the manifold. And then putting it back together, it's the first thing I'll do is just put these 2 cables, put them where they're supposed to go, bolt them up, and then we got 2 hoses for the 2 small hoses for the throttle body. You got the one on the bottom and the one here, and we'll hook these 2 up and put them on, and then we'll set this on there. So that it's just easier to do that with the throttle body off the manifold. So I'm going to go ahead and put those cables on real quick and the 2 hoses, and then we'll set this.
Go.
Alright, here's that throttle bracket with the 2 holes for the bolts to the throttle body. Here's the 2 cables. So you're just going to take the cable, kind of turn the throttle body to the side here, and you're going to line it up with that notch and the plastic on the bottom one, and line this one up with the metal. And then they just slide in there and lock in, and it should look like this. Those 2 and these notches, that's where the cable goes in and then slides around. So once you got that, now we'll hook up the 2 hoses, and this is the one I split. So you're just going to hook these up before you, and you can spray these down with WD-40 a little bit to make the hoses go on easier, which is what I should have done. So I'm going to do that real quick, and then we'll put these hoses on, put those 2 bolts in on the throttle body, and we'll. Alright, so I just got it set it. I just got it kind of sitting on there right now. I got those 2 screws for the throttle body bracket, which is right here, and we're just going to go ahead and put those back in. I love how Honda and Toyota use screws instead of bolts. It's a pain. Especially as they age, these screws get really hard to take out. I drop one of the screws.
I can see it.
Get my magnet. Really don't feel like any kind of Phillips head screwdriver should be on any car, except maybe the big air intake hoses, but Toyota and Honda love using them. And like I said, it's probably fine when they're newer, but once they age, they just don't want to come out without impact. These actually came out pretty easy, but the ones for the actual idle air control valve motor were seized in pretty good. Took an impact screwdriver to get them out. Now you have 2 nuts and 2 long bolts, 12mm. Some people get upset when I don't tell you what size it is. So you just have the 2 nuts that go on the top. And these are 12mm, and then you got the 2 long bolts that go on the bottom. You just kind of want to snug them up. You don't want to go nuts with it. I'm sure there's a official torque spec for it, but you just want to go a little bit better than hand tight with it. You got 2 in the bottom of the throttle body. If I would have thought about it, I would have filmed taking it off so you know how to do it, but just do opposite of what I'm doing now, or reverse order, you're good. So we're just going to tighten these up a little bit. I like to crisscross them. And like I said, you're not going crazy on these. I'm just going to double check them a little bit. You only have, I believe, you got 3 connectors. You have your idle air control connector, you have your TPS, throttle position sensor, and then you got one more on the top. And I lost the other one. Where did I put that? Alright, I gotta fish that out, and then we'll pick it back up.
Alright, go.
Alright, so you basically got 3 connectors on them. Once you get those plugged in, I mean, every car might be a little bit different depending on the year as far as your hoses go, but you have, like I said, you have the 2 throttle body hoses down here. You have your 3 connectors, idle air, TPS up here. You're going to have a few different vacuum hoses for your air intake. You got the main one up here, and then there's a couple other ones that go. You got one over here, and I think that's it. So we're just going to slide this back in, and then finish hooking it up, and then we'll clear the code and start it up and see what happens with it. So anyway, I'm going to put this back in, and then we'll pick back up with you in a second here. Alright, so it's all back together. You do have this big engine cover right here. It's 4 10mm bolts around the perimeter. You can see it's idling, running right now, and it's not surging. Before, we could rev up and down, rev up and down, rev up and down. So we have no more surge. I haven't cleared the code yet. I'm going to go take it for a ride and see what happens with it. But it appears to be fine. So if you get that p0505, I would suspect your idle air control motor, valve, or whatever right away. There is a few things you can do to kind of test it according to the service manual, but I would just make sure that you have connections, you have power going to it and ground, all that before you replace it. If you have all that going on, then it's probably a safe bet that your valve is bad or clogged or whatever. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and tighten down this engine cover, clear the go, take it for a ride. If you have any questions, you can go ahead and leave it down below or email me through the YouTube channel. Anyway, thanks for watching. Have a good day, and as always, God bless.